Since the inception of the Boeing 737 in the 1960s, nearly 60 years ago, the aviation world has advanced by leaps and bounds. Yet amazingly, the 737 remains in somewhat of a time warp as it still retains its mid-20th century technology. Sure, Boeing has given us many iterations and variants of the 737 over the years, but the core technology remains fundamentally the same. Then in 2011, when Boeing created the 737 MAX as their answer to compete with the Airbus A320neo, the truth was, as we all came to find out, that the MAX was really nothing more than smoke and mirrors. It was simply an illusion wrapped around the same 50-year-old technology. So then why didn't Boeing just build a brand new aircraft? Well, they almost did. Have you ever heard of Project Yellowstone? Me either. But I'm gonna tell you about it next on Maximus. Greetings everybody, Maximus here. I hope you're all doing well, wherever you may be all around this great big world of ours. So I saw this story on the aviation website Aerotime Hub about a secret project Boeing was working on in the late 1990s and early 2000s called Project Yellowstone. I have to admit I never heard about Yellowstone, at least not the name anyway. So that's why I thought I'd tell you about it. In the article, they pointed out that the initial 1967 Boeing 737 design was by modern standards just a regional airplane, with approximately 100 seats and a 2,850 kilometer or about an 1,800 mile range. It was barely on par with something like the current Embraer E-Series jets today. But by the 1980s, Boeing introduced a single-aisle 757 to handle the longer ranges and accommodate more passengers. So at that point, there was no need to greatly extend the 737's capabilities beyond a regional level. However, as time went on, airlines indeed began looking to get more out of the 737. So over the years, it was stretched and restretched and engined and re-engined quite a few times over the decades. So much so that by the late 90s, Boeing's workhorse had pushed into the 200-plus seat 3,100 mile market with the new 737 NG, the NG standing for Next Generation Models. Then in 2003, the production of my all-time favorite plane, the 757, was sadly discontinued, in large part thanks to airlines buying the 737 to do the 757's job. So now any thought of replacing the 737 would also mean the necessity of replacing the 757 too, something which Boeing actually attempted a few times over the years. Yet Boeing still continued to slap new paint and the occasional new motors on its flagship, continuing to pass off the 737 as a new model with each upgrade. Then, in the late 90s and early 2000s, word of a secret Boeing project dubbed Yellowstone began to leak out. As the article pointed out, Boeing's plan was as smart as it was ambitious. The plan was to completely overhaul Boeing's entire product inventory with 3 aircraft that would implement the newest technology available. These aircraft were codenamed Yellowstone Y1, Yellowstone Y2, and Yellowstone Y3, or simply Y1, Y2, and Y3. Y2 eventually went on to become the very successful revolutionary 787 Dreamliner, while the Y3 group incorporated replacing the 747 and larger options of the 777. As a matter of fact, the Y3 was eventually the inspiration for the 777X, which eventually manifested itself in a new engine and wing upgrade for the basic 777 rather than a revolution. Still, it was a change for the better nonetheless. But as for Yellowstone Y1, the Y1's goal was to utilize research from Y2, the 787, and the larger Y3 concepts and combine them into a smaller version of the Dreamliner with an all-composite fuselage and new, more aerodynamic carbon composite wings. Add to that a fly-by-wire flight control system, making it incredibly efficient and versatile enough to replace Boeing's entire line of single-aisle narrow-body aircraft. The dawn of the new millennium of the early 2000s brought great promise for Boeing in their Project Yellowstone. The plan was to introduce the 737 Y1 replacement by 2015. Then in 2010, Boeing's patent for the Yellowstone project was revealed, giving the aviation public a first look at the new project in what was considered at the time a dream of all low-cost airlines and a bold step for the airline industry in general. The original patent showed the Y1 with the T-tail on an elliptical fuselage cross-section, with a twin-aisle 232 configuration, yet still retaining a drag per seat and weight per seat ratio comparable to single-aisle competition in the market. Many weight-saving options were explored as well, most of which was to utilize the newest composite structures available at the time. Jim Albaugh, Boeing commercial airplane CEO, even went as far as to reveal that Boeing was already looking to convert their factories from aluminum to all composite manufacturing. But just then, 2011 came along. And if you're a subscriber to this channel, then you probably already know what the significance of 2011 was. But for those of you that may not understand the significance of that year, 2011 was the year that Airbus blindsided Boeing when they announced their new revolutionary aircraft, the A320neo. Neo, of course, standing for New Engine Option, which would greatly increase the A320's range and reduce fuel consumption by 15 to 20%. And then when the president of lifelong Boeing customer American Airlines notified Boeing that they were going to order 320 of the new Airbus Neos, Boeing's world was turned upside down. Suddenly, the new 737 MAX generation was rushed into production, and less than 4 months later, Boeing was taking orders for the new MAX. And the rest, of course, as we all now know it, as they say, is history. However, in 2014, Boeing CEO James McNerney revealed that the Y1 project wasn't dead, but the 737 MAX would likely be replaced much later in the new century, around the year 2030, with something slightly bigger, but not dramatically different. According to the article, some of the more innovative ideas may have been discarded, but the premise of an all-composite elliptical fuselage remained. Soon, though, there were troubles with the elliptical fuselage strength with the Rolls-Royce engines, leading to more doubt about the project, delaying its engineering even further. Then, just prior to the 2019 MAX groundings, Boeing was actively touting the creation of a new NMA. This time it would be dubbed the 797. This would be Boeing's new mid-size airplane that was to be a middle ground between the troubled MAX and the Dreamliner. Boeing said it was optimistic that the NMA would launch around 2020, but once the MAX crisis hit, any and all future plans of the NMA were put on the shelf to concentrate on the crisis at hand and to keep Boeing from dissolving as a company altogether. Additionally, for a while, Boeing was considering putting new engines on the 767, calling it the 767X, making that the new NMA option, but the project just became financially and technically impractical. Then again, at the beginning of 2020, as the MAX crisis was drawing to a close, and there appeared to be a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, new Boeing CEO David Calhoun reignited interest in Boeing's NMA project, when he announced that basically all designs for what up until that time have been the NMA had been scrapped completely, and Boeing would start from scratch and begin a clean sheet reevaluation of the NMA project. Calhoun also hinted that the future NMA would look much more like an Airbus than the traditional Boeing jet customers had become accustomed to. However, as of yet, those plans still remain to be seen. While an NMA option is desperately needed to secure the future of the company, right now Boeing is busy putting out too many fires with their current inventory of aircraft. While the MAX crisis seems to be over, there is still the continued manufacturing problems of the Dreamliner. Also, the 777X is years overdue and continues to struggle with certification issues. Add to that, the new MAX 10 is also way behind schedule and also faces more FAA certification issues. So Boeing is going to be busy for a while. But with that said, as Boeing found out in 2011 when Airbus surprised them with the Neo, change comes along quickly. So Boeing needs to be forward-thinking and focused on a replacement for the 737, or risk being number 2 to Airbus for decades to come. I realize some of this may have been news you've heard about the NMA, however, I found the Yellowstone project interesting. Hopefully you did too. Well, that will do it for now. Oh, before we go, I need to give my usual coffee shout-outs to two great friends of the channel, Dr. G and the mysterious someone. Once again, you humble me. Thank you for supporting the channel. And also Kataya, thank you for your first-time purchase of 3 coffees. Your support is also greatly appreciated. And as always, if you would like to help support the channel, the links are in the description. And thanks for taking the time to stop by again. And on your way out, please make sure to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. And remember, leave the rubber on the runway and your troubles on the ground. And I will see you next time in the air. Yeah, this is Maximus.